Good morning, everybody. I'm Tim Slater, City Councilor from North Penn and President of the League of Oregon Cities Board of Directors this year. I want to welcome you to the League's 93rd annual conference here in the beautiful city of Eugene. Now, kicking off things today, we're going to have a presentation of the colors by the University of Oregon's ROTC unit. So I'd invite you all to please stand. Performing our national anthem this morning is the North Eugene High School High Tones, led by Megan Perdue. Now, if you would, please join me in a pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, for liberty and justice for all. Now, for our invocation today, we have Donald Ivey, the tribal chief of the Coquille Indian tribe. Don?
Good morning. As I've said to other groups when I've been asked to offer an invocation, that one of my roles as chief of the Tribal Council of Coquille Indian Tribe is to be able to exercise some prerogative. So I'm going to ask you all to please be seated. Hayus Masi, many thanks for the opportunity to be here. It is indeed an honor for me to make some remarks which I hope, if not inspirational, will be in some way informative and enlightening to your purpose and your gathering here these several days. When Tim asked me if I would do this, I immediately said yes. It's an obligation to assist a fellow citizen when asked. It's a responsibility to step up, a duty to be supportive of shared interests and common goals. What I wasn't thinking about, though, when I said yes, was the time of the year that this event occurs, the last week of September, the last few days of our Indian summers that come so briefly to us. Gathered here in this room, I'm thinking about how else we might be gathered. Maybe we could be gathered in a fishing boat, chasing fall Chinook. Maybe we could be gathered for one last huckleberry picking expedition. Maybe we could be gathered in some special place to watch the sun set and then watch the moon rise in these beautiful golden hues of early autumn. Instead, we're gathered inside. But to the premise of my having said yes when Tim asked, each of us have a duty, I believe, when we are called upon to stand and to act in the best interests of our respective communities, but also to act in the best interests of what we all hold in common and we all hold dear: clean air, and clean water, and good food. Each of us have a responsibility, I believe, that as humans, to remember that we all share same and fundamental needs, and that however we might strive for them, whether in our personal lives or in our professional commitments, we all need safety and sustenance and shelter. Each of us then has an obligation to those we love and care about, no matter what our work, no matter our house of worship, to remember that whatever our ambitions or the measures of our success, we do not arrive at our destinations alone. So when asked, we rise and we serve. As any Native American basket weaver will tell you, it is not enough just to know how to put sticks together. It's not enough to know the warp and weft of basket making, or even the skills of making a perfect start, or even the talents of laying an overlay as a decorative finish. Those weavers will also tell you that there must be others who know where the good things grow, who are willing to tend those gardens, who know when it is time to set fire, or to dig, or to pick, to ensure next year's crop and next year's abundance. And they will tell you there must also be those who know how to process and store those gathered materials, and also know when it is time for them to be used. They will also say, to make a good basket, one that is strong and enduring requires a good heart and a clear mind. And in making that basket, one must also have a song to sing. A song to sing into the basket is being made, a song to sing when that basket is completed. And in that song you sing, no matter the materials used, no matter the perfection of the start, or the warp, or the weft, or the overlay, that song is not just for you. That song is for your community. That song is for your family. That song is for all, and all that you hope can be. I wish you well in this gathering. I wish for you the best in these proceedings. I wish for you to make a good basket. I wish for you to sing a good song. Shuan Halni, take care. Hayus Masi.
Thanks, Don. This time, I'd like to welcome to the stage our hosts this year from the city of Eugene, the Honorable Lucy Vinnis, and from the city of Springfield, the Honorable Christine Lindbergh.
Good morning, and thank you very much, Tim, and thank you, Don, for that incredible invocation. It was really moving and thoughtful and helpful, I think. Thank you all for being here, and welcome to Eugene, and in fact, to this metropolitan area that embraces both Eugene and our sister city, Springfield. As you know, a river runs through it. We're tied together by this natural resource that connects Eugene, the University of Oregon, and Springfield. There are similarities and parallels in our growth. Together, we share an agricultural legacy. Even through the most recent recession, our food and beverage industry continued to grow and thrive in Lane County. Our local food groups include wine and beer, yogurt and tofu, teas and cereals, and every fruit imaginable. We hope that you will have some time and take some time to savor some of these, our local microbrews, and enjoy our eateries. We are both invested in new technology as a key to our economic development. In Eugene, this has focused on investment in high-speed fiber in our downtown to foster growth in tech and tech-dependent industries, and to help them connect to markets to the north and to the south. The University of Oregon is investing $1 billion in a $1 billion development in the Knight Campus for Accelerating Scientific Impact to bring research discoveries from the research campus into the market. And Springfield is focusing on advanced manufacturing in the wood products industry. We're investing in our riverfront, following our major transportation corridor along Franklin Boulevard. Downtown Eugene, the 5th Street Market, moving toward the riverfront, east to the new Knight Campus for Accelerating Scientific Impact, along the University of Oregon, into Glenwood, and into our sister city, Springfield. Eugene is in the beginning stages of creating a new neighborhood along our riverfront, part of a long-held vision for our city that will include almost 300 units of housing, 75 of them affordable housing and the rest market rate. It will include a renovated former steam plant to provide both commercial and public gathering places, and a new 3.5-acre riverfront park. Some of you may have had the chance to see this if you toured yesterday using our new Peace Health Rides bike share. Both of our downtowns are investing in public art. You may have toured Eugene's 20 by 21 murals yesterday. We have a goal to create 20 new murals by the year 2021, and we are well on our way. They represent artists from all over the world. And Springfield also has a growing public art investment in both murals and sculptures. Both of our downtowns are concerned about and addressing a crisis in housing shortages and an increase in homelessness. You may have taken the opportunity yesterday to see Eugene's Rest Stop programs and Opportunity Village that provide sort of low-cost transitional housing for people who have been homeless. And today you may take the opportunity to get a firsthand understanding of Eugene's community justice initiative to address both public safety and to assist people living in our public spaces to access services. Both of our cities are invested in and excited about the opportunity presented by the 2021 World Track and Field Championship, which will be hosted at Hayward Field and which presents us with an opportunity to showcase our communities to the world. This event in Eugene and Springfield is the biggest international athletic event that year in 2021, and is the first time the IAAF has ever had this event in the United States. And we are calling it Oregon 21 because it is really going to take the whole state to host that very significant event. In addition to being linked by our beautiful river, and I will point out that people can fly fish and catch steelhead in the river as it runs through our communities. We are linked by our investments in transportation, and I will now turn to my colleague, Mayor Christine Lundberg, to talk about that and other initiatives in Springfield.
Well, I will just take up a couple more minutes just to emphasize a few things about Springfield. Springfield's legacy is as a timber industry community, as many of the Oregon communities were for many, many years, and some still are, as is Springfield. We're very proud of our timber heritage. We have headquarters for timber companies, and we still have very active mills working. So I've been very focused on working on what is the future for timber in Oregon. And we have become a state that is recognized for our innovation and our forward thinking on engineered wood products. There's all kinds of things we can do. The most exciting is all of the variety of projects you can do with wood. I saw recently that they're actually studying 3D printed tires that are made out of wood. So when the tread wears down, you just print yourself some new tread. But it's made out of wood. So if you start thinking really outside the box, what can we do? Where is the future? So Springfield is working very hard to continue that legacy and to work on where we can go for the future, and a future for a lot of the communities, because we've worked very hard. It's a place we can create jobs, and it's a place that our kids can get a great education and move into some of those futuristic possibilities so that our state stays at the forefront of innovation. So Glenwood, that Lucy mentioned, is a place that we took over from Eugene, and it's kind of that in-between place in between downtown, the two downtowns. So I'm hoping that some of you got to go on that tour. It is the one place where we put in a dog bone roundabout because we love our roundabouts. And I hope you got to see that. If you haven't, it's very innovative. Actually, people really like it. We are working on 2021 with an indoor track facility to complement Hayward Field, and I personally am trying to get at least most of it done by 2021 so that we will have a legacy project, have one of the only indoor track facilities in the entire West Coast. So we're working very hard to put together that project and get it funded and get it at least underway by the time the games arrive. And I just want to say one thing about public art. We have put a lot of time and effort into our public art. We built the Flame out in Gateway, so it's a spot along the freeway where location is everything, is to bring attention to our metropolitan area with a stunning piece of artwork done by the same artist who's done our riverboat, that if you saw it coming into Springfield, and many of our other art things. And one of the pieces of art that I'm most proud of is the Women's Veterans Memorial. As a women veteran myself, I am extremely proud that we have focused on our veterans. We have a Vietnam memorial, and along with it now we have a women's memorial, and we are going to continue to add to those sculptures that are there to honor those that have fought in wars and have served our country so proudly, and we want to thank all of those veterans for what they've done, and we're very proud of the public art that we're developing on their behalf. So I hope you get to see some of those things still while you're here. If not, please come back and visit it at another time. Thank you.
Well, thank you both. And with the river running through it and we're able to fly fish, we probably should have invited Brad Pitt to be part of this set. That would have been fun. Wouldn't it have been fun? Well, once again, good morning and welcome to this 93rd Annual League of Oregon Cities Conference. We've taken a good time and made it even better this year as the conference facilitates learning, networking, celebrating, collaborating. There's a whole bunch of aspects and good reasons as to why you're here, truly enabling us to make a difference for cities. So, yesterday there were tours. How many went on tours? There we go. Okay, we've got some hands up that way. Understand we had members exploring in Eugene and Springfield, learning about the university athletic program, the public arts programs, and the homeless. These tours are designed so that we can learn and ask questions and see the things on the ground. And I'd encourage you to take advantage of that opportunity. Now, I was going to say, so next year, make sure you do that. But the way we've structured tours, there's still some today. So if you have an interest, drop by the LOC booth, and now they'll see about getting you signed up as part of that. But they're an excellent opportunity to see things as they really are. So we had workshops yesterday. So who was at workshops? Oh, great. Look at that. You know, it's interesting. No matter how long you've been in this business, you've never really arrived. So you can always learn something and pick up something. And if it's not from the person that's presenting it, it's going to be from the people that are sitting next to you. So it's a wonderful opportunity in front of you. I was at the counselor's workshop, which was, we've always done it this way is over. And from there, I grabbed a few quotes I'll share with you. Growth and comfort don't coexist. Playing it safe is no longer playing it smart. Sometimes the most progressive thing you can do is to stop doing something. Don't treat the organization like a rental car or like a pool car. Which car falls apart the quickest? The one that everybody's in charge of. And lastly, do you have somebody on your planning commission or council or whatever that somehow they never seem to get satisfied? Well, they just explained it. Some people are miserable and they like it. The League Conference gives us all the opportunity to see the things we may not be able to see at home, while providing us with the resources and experts and all of you. You know, you're an exceptionally large part of this, and it's a great opportunity for us to share, to come up with the ideas that, hey, I didn't understand that, but now I do. And as a matter of fact, quick aside, I'm a baseball fan, and the All-Star game has a particular rule about it, and that is every team has one member, at least one member that's on the All-Star team. And at our conference, one of my personal goals, and we didn't quite make it this year, is we have 241 cities. Every city ought to have at least one representative because that's what we are, the League of Oregon Cities. So you'll see some more work on that. My focus, hey, get involved with your league, whether it's with committees, with the 2019 legislature coming up. There's going to be lots of opportunity to do stuff at that, or even on the board. It's an important vehicle, and it's an important part to make us effective. And it's really because of not only the excellent staff, not only the traditions that we've had and the background and the credibility that we build, but because of all of you. And that's what gives it strength. Now, with that, I'd like to introduce the Executive Director of the League of Oregon Cities, Mr. Mike Culley.
So we did have 183 cities out of 241, but I share his goal in getting everybody here. So welcome. Thank you for coming. You all came to see me, right? And by the way, wow, you are a good-looking group. This is great. It's great to see you all here, and I thank you for coming. I've got a lot of thank yous to go through. So the good news and the bad news, I guess, is they gave me 5 minutes to get through all this, so you only have to listen to me for 5 minutes. And that may be the good news. There's better news, though. You get to hear me for 10 minutes tomorrow. So I'll go through what I have to go through here. And anyway, thank you for coming. This is a 93rd annual conference for the League of Oregon Cities. But really, for me, it's the first conference of awesomeness in leadership, and that's all of you. So thank you for what you do for your communities. Thank you for coming here. It's our goal as the League of Oregon Cities and the visionary board that we have, which is made up of all of you, by the way. We have a very diverse board, very representative of the state, with a lot of vision. And it's their goal to make this conference the best ever. And we're sincere about that. We don't want to be status quo. We want to give you takeaways, real things that you can go back to your communities with and implement and really put to use in your communities. And that's our goal here. We want to make this worthwhile. We don't want to make this just another conference. So we are very aggressively moving in that direction, and this is the first start. I call this the turning point for the League of Oregon Cities because I think it is. It's the start of a new era. It's a new generation. New leadership always brings new vision and new ideas, and that's what we've got here today. So I really hope you get a lot out of this. It means a lot to me if you talk to me, if you talk to Tim, if you talk to our staff and let us know sincerely what you think. If you're getting out of this, what you want to get out of this. We're doing a lot of things differently. In 2019, you may have seen the little cards that were sitting out on the tables announcing our April 12th conference. This is something that we're doing for the first time. It'll be in Southern Oregon. We're doing it in Ashland. And we are going out and we are meeting with folks in advance of these conferences to find out what you want to talk about and designing our conferences around you. So I'll stop there. We'll get more into that tomorrow. And I do have a lot to talk about. First of all, again, welcome. If you haven't downloaded the app on your cell phone, do that. We do have paper copies of the schedule, but the app is pretty awesome. If you haven't looked at it already, you can self-design your schedules. There's social media feeds on there that are a lot of fun. There's ways to connect, a list of conference attendees and things that are coming up. So I think it's a really big step in the right direction. We're going that way. We're in the process of redesigning our website, rebranding. You're going to see all that roll out early next year. So that app, if you haven't got it, you need help, come see me. I'll help you download it. Saturday is interesting. We're doing things differently. Again, we wanted to give you the practical workshops and the things that you were used to, but we're adding new elements. And this year, that is the Homeless Summit, and that's coming up Saturday. We chose that because it's an issue that affects not just large cities, but all cities, and it's permeating all of Oregon. So this is a very interesting seminar that we'll be having Saturday. We invite you to join us there. Tonight's is the award dinner. I think you're all familiar with that. We are actually, I believe we're sold out. We may have a waiting list for that, and there may actually be a few tickets left. But if you're interested in that, again, see somebody from the registration desk, a staff, and we'll see if we can get you taken care of there. Saturday mornings, membership meeting. The breakfast starts at 8. The voting and business meeting starts at 8:15, so you want to get there early. The cards will be out for voting. Should be an interesting meeting. And now I'll go into my thank yous, and I'll get off the stage here because my mom always said, be brilliant, be brief, and be gone. So I will try to adhere to that. I want to thank the City of Eugene. Obviously, Mayor Lucy Vinnis, you have been a fantastic host. It's been a pleasure working with you up to this point. Also, Mayor Christine Lundberg from Springfield. We met early on. Hopefully, we moved in the direction that you wanted us to go, and it's awesome. It's been a great time so far, and this is just the start. I want to thank our conference volunteers. The University of Oregon has a program called RARE, and they are rare individuals. They have 300 volunteers who've given, I think it's over 500,000 volunteer hours over the course of their history. They're here today. We couldn't do all this without their help, so I want to give a shout out to them. Amazing people. If you see them, thank them. And my last piece here is to thank our lead sponsor, and that's Portland General Electric, because without them, we would not have power. So I want to start with that. They have been great partners. Absolutely. Thank you, Randy. Thank you, Maria. They have been great partners throughout this. We are going to be doing a lot more with them through the years as we work forward on our relationship. You're seeing a lot of different things happen with the league, and a lot of that has to do with public-private partnerships. There's good reasons for that, and again, I'll get into that tomorrow. So I want to thank Portland General Electric again for their huge sponsorship and their huge support of this event, because really, I wouldn't be standing up here without their help. So it is my pleasure to introduce their new CEO, who actually just took the reins, just as I did. It's a new era of leadership all over the state, and Miss Maria Pope. So she has been with Portland General Electric since 2009. She's been a CFO, come through the ranks, worked for Mentor Graphics, started with Morgan Stanley. She's done a lot. She's been a lot of places, and she brings a whole new vision and a whole new era of leadership to PGE. So it's really exciting to be able to introduce her, who will introduce our keynote speaker. And with that, I'm going to get off the stage. I'm going to introduce Maria, and the podium, the dais is yours.
Good morning. It is absolutely terrific to be with you all here today. Thank you so much for your leadership, what you do for every community and city in our great state of Oregon. I've lived here pretty much all of my 53 years, and I truly believe we have a special place, and we would not have it if not but for your leadership and your dedication. So thank you very, very much. I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about Portland General, what we're doing around energy. I know it matters to all of you and to your citizens. And then also I have the great pleasure of introducing Jason Roberts, the creator of Better Blocks. At PGE, we are so proud to have been powering a good portion of Oregon for the last 130 years. We're firmly grounded in delivering safe, reliable, and affordable power. It's something that we know that is a responsibility that we don't take lightly and is critical to your citizens, to the businesses in your community, and to the growth of our region. The energy industry is also going through a transformation. As we just listened, we can take nothing for granted, and in particular, our environment. And through the uses of technology, renewable energy, we can create a more sustainable, low-carbon future. And on your chairs, or you might be sitting on them, is one of our visions for being a low-carbon future. So I hope you'll take a look at those documents. We are looking at a world where we will see dramatically rising temperatures. We will see implications to our forests, as we have already begun to see. And we're committed to lowering our carbon emissions by 80% below our 1990 levels, which is ahead of where the state's targets are. That is taking our current 40% carbon-free energy mix and more than doubling it over the next couple of decades. None of this would be possible, though, without the great partnership that we have with all of you. And really, when I think of Portland General Electric, and I think about being an Oregonian, I think about that partnership really going back to the early 1900s, when we began to electrify our cities, we began to electrify rural parts of Oregon, and create the opportunity for growth in this region. What we're really doing as we move forward is re-electrifying, and doing it with a smarter, more reliable, cleaner energy grid. And thank you so much for your partnership. In particular, we're thrilled to be working with many of you on smart cities initiatives, and I hope that you'll have an opportunity to listen to my colleague, Andy Macklin, who's here today and going to be speaking with many of you about that. We also are working with many transit authorities in your region. In particular, we have projects going with Salem, with Wilsonville, with many others, and with TriMet in Portland, we actually are launching a first all-electric bus route as we speak. As we transform our energy future, I think it's really important that we remember that we're still grounded in safety, reliability, and affordability. Most people don't realize, and I think take for granted, that the energy at voltage levels that we operate can kill people. And the safety of our coworkers, and there's many of my PGE colleagues here today, we take the safety of our coworkers, our communities, our customers, every citizen in your cities very, very seriously, and it is our #1 priority. Second, we know that outages are a real problem. We know you get calls, you get complaints. I heard this morning just a reminder of how important even the power consistency is to many of our businesses. And we take that very seriously, and we'll focus as we integrate more renewables on having the same reliability going forward as we have in the past. And as I said, I've lived in Oregon almost all of my life. I was born here, and I recognize the kind of state that we have and who lives in your communities. And we are not a wealthy state. We are a beautiful state, but we are not necessarily a wealthy state. And 20% of PGE customers or more struggle paying their bills every day. They trade off between clothing for their children and medicines for their parents. And we take the affordability of our product very, very seriously. As was mentioned, I've worked in high tech. I've also spent more than a decade working in the forest products industry. And I fully appreciate that for businesses, our electric bills and that power quality, as I mentioned, is critical. It's one of the reasons at PGE that we are so pleased that J.D. Power has recognized us as the #1 utility in the West for business customer satisfaction. We also are, thank you. We also are one of the largest employers in Oregon. We're about 4th or 5th largest employer, and we're present in about 30 counties. We also are probably, if we are in your jurisdiction, your largest taxpayer. We take our role in the community really seriously, and we volunteer over 45,000 hours collectively through our employees and our retirees. We also donate $4.3 million each year to local schools and community organizations across the state. I would now like to introduce Jason Roberts. Jason is the creator of Better Blocks, Art Conspiracy, Oak Cliff Transit Authority, and Bike Friendly Oak Cliff. Jason's technical computer skills, his website design capability, his musical talent, which led him to participating in rock bands, got him outdoors and to the inner city, collaborating with local artists and community members. From there, Jason morphed into urban planning, entrepreneurship, and truly national leadership. Today, Jason is going to talk to us about reimagining the future. Jason led the Better Blocks project from an art project to an international movement. Jason is from Oak Cliff in Dallas, Texas, and after visiting in a family trip to Europe, he asked himself, why can't we have city blocks, streets, like they have in Europe? And Jason did more than just talk about it and think about it. He took action. And he and his friends moved very, very quickly, truly quickly indeed. And with $1,000 and just over one Friday night in 2010, they transformed one city block in Dallas, and a national movement was started. Jason then went on to found the Oak Hill Transit District, which received $23 million from the Federal Transit Administration to reintroduce a streetcar program. Jason is a frequent TED Talk speaker and is the recipient of a White House Champions of Change Award. Jason, thank you for your inspiration, and thank you for being with us here today.
All right, it's great to be here. Let my presentation pull up here. So you heard a little bit of my background. I've gone from computers to rock band. All of a sudden, I've become an urban planner, which was not expected for me in my life. So it's been very. I'm going to show kind of an image, though, to start that I show often. That was an early inspiration. This is in Montmartre, Paris, and I remember when I first saw this and thinking, man, I wish this was in my neighborhood. If it was there, I'd go there every single day. I'd want to have a cup of coffee here. I love the little streets, the landscaping spilling off the sides of the building. I asked my friends, what do you think about places like this? And they're like, yeah, we want those too. We want to retire here. We put these on our postcards. We want our kids to work here. I said, well, if we all collectively wish we had more places that look like this, then why do we keep building places that look like this? Thank you. Which was the early genesis of the idea of like, well, we make things all of the time. And we can make things that inspire us and that we want to celebrate our shared time here and make places that are special, that we would put on postcards, and that we want to retire in and that we want to cast down to future generations. Or we can make these places that we just don't care about, that are disposable. I also studied around, went to Rome, and I started looking at these places that were plazas that are thousands of years old that were still working with markets and young people and old people. I went up to Amsterdam. I saw grandparents riding bicycles with grandkids on these little streets, and I saw all these things, and I thought, well, whoever built these things built them to last. They built them with a legacy. So I'm flying back to Dallas, where I live in Texas, and I'm thinking, well, what are we building? What's going to be our legacy? What are we handing down to our future generations? So I got back home, and when I landed, I saw a bunch of these things, which really depressed me. So I thought, we're spending billions of dollars to build these things that we don't really care about. I'll never be able to ride a bicycle with my grandchild here, I guarantee you, and have a cup of espresso. But we're building them all over the place, and everything around them isn't really working either. So one of my other issues was I wasn't an urban planner. I didn't know where to get started. I was your IT guy. I was the guy that would have been setting up this projector right now and setting up the microphones and probably taking viruses off your computers. Not the guy that you would give the keys to say, hey, go fix our city blocks. But I wanted to make change, and I wanted to have things happen. But when I started talking and showing up to City Hall, I was told, well, honestly, first of all, this isn't Europe. This is the U.S. Dallas has got a car culture. So you're not going to be able to get people out of their cars. But I'd seen other cities give examples of where they had car cultures as well. This is in Copenhagen. And they saw that there was a real problem with cars overtaking their beautiful old historic plazas and markets. And they were able to transform them. And now if you walk into these spaces, you can see they're all pedestrian zones. And they're vibrant and they're full of life. Well, I was also told, well, weather is the issue. It's just too hot in Dallas. And then when I started studying cities all over, I realized, well, everyone blames climate on why we can't have cool places. So we said it's too hot in Dallas, but I know in New Orleans it gets hot, and people still go outside. In Austin it gets hot. And other cities were telling me, well, it's too cold. And so I would go to and travel. I would go to Lithuania, and I'd see people sitting outside under heaters with blankets, drinking mulled wine. So I thought, people know how to embrace these things. Well, what are they doing different? I found out actually that the Danish have a rule. They said, actually, there's no such thing as bad weather, just bad clothing. So I started going to City Hall. I said, hey, I want to get involved. I want to take part. And they said, well, the thing is, we've got all these plans, Jason. If you want to get involved, we've got downtown 360 plans. We have a comprehensive plans. We have bike plans that we built in 2011 that nothing ever happened with. Why don't you can work on those? We've got this 2035 mobility plan. So I thought, well, Dallas is going to be great in 2035. I hope I make it. So I started trying to find inspiration around me. Where were other people making changes in their own communities and making maybe it a little faster than this 30-year process that I wasn't interested in? I wanted to see how do we make great places in 30 days. And I found these German students who were doing these interesting projects over when the Berlin Wall fell over. And they would take these old transit stations that were full of graffiti and run down and people didn't want to be around, and they transformed them into opera houses overnight. Then I found these groups of students in England that took these old derelict gas stations and turned them over into a movie house over a weekend as well. So then I started saying, well, is there anything happening in the U.S.? And I did find this interesting group. In San Francisco, there was this group of people that were taking parking meters and saying, I can put money in this parking meter, but I don't necessarily have to have a car there. Why don't we turn it into a little park? Which started this whole parking day movement that happens all over the U.S. And then even more notable, that many of us have experienced is Times Square and seeing the transformation of this area that was all car-centric, right? The crossroads of the world. And then people coming together and saying, well, you know what? We have a lot of pedestrians here. We can probably split this in half and have accommodations for both. And so the city came out and said, well, it's going to be real expensive, and then businesses are telling us it's going to be the end of the world and Carmageddon, and everything's going to shut down. So why don't we just test it out? So they went to Walmart and got a bunch of chairs and just sit them out in the middle of the road, and people started flocking into Times Square to sit down and be able to look at the space. It became so successful, it didn't end business or didn't kill traffic in the area, and so now they've gone in and they've made it permanent. So anyone who's been there has probably experienced this beautiful, amazing space. So that brings me to my neighborhood. So how can I get started? What can I do? I live in Dallas, Texas. But beyond that, I live in a neighborhood that was always considered the bad part of town. It's called Oak Cliff. And part of the reason it was considered the bad part of town was for about 70 or so years, we've had a few bad people that were from my neighborhood. Bonnie and Clyde are from my neighborhood. Lee Harvey Oswald's from my neighborhood. And so and this theater was actually the project I wanted to start on. It's called the Texas Theater. In fact, the only reason it had a sign was because Oliver Stone built the sign from the movie JFK, because this is the theater where Lee Harvey was captured after the assassination of John F. Kennedy. And so it's in the middle of my neighborhood. Nobody wanted to touch it. The city was saying, stay away from that thing. That was a black eye for our community. And said, well, I really want to get involved. There was a small board that was trying to do things, and they said, we need $3 million, but nobody wants to donate this to this thing. And said, well, I don't have $3 million, but I have a few friends in the arts community because I played in rock bands and I met a lot of people. So why don't we bring our arts friends together? We'll have them come to the theater and we'll have them paint on the ground with us. And then we'll turn the theater into this instant art gallery. So we'll have like 100 friends come and do this. So we gathered a small team together, and this is us kind of in the theater. And minutes before we're about to open the doors, we're building these easels, and we're thinking, this is probably going to be an abject failure. It's the middle of winter. We're on the bad side of town in a theater that's been closed for over a decade. But when we opened the doors, we had 700 people show up. We sold every piece of art we'd created the night before with the community. But beyond that, people came up to me and said, we've been waiting for someone to open the doors to this theater. And I thought, I was waiting for someone to open the doors too. Are we all just waiting for someone to kind of take the keys and make this change, right? And the funny thing is, I decided I want to keep helping, so I started showing up to the board meetings, and within 3 months, I became the president of the Texas Theater. So I tell people, be careful when you say you want to help, because they will throw the keys at you. And I mean, no, many of you know this. So I decided I want to take on a new project. What else can I work on? So I started pulling up old maps out of our city. And one of the maps I found was what my neighborhood used to look like. So this is my neighborhood of Oak Cliff. The top right is downtown Dallas. But over the rest of this, these bold black lines were some interesting things. These small clusters of commercial buildings that were just little block level wide. But they were really interesting. But they were nestled into our neighborhood. When I started asking questions like, why did these exist, I realized it's because we had a trolley car line. We had a streetcar system. So I started attending economic development meetings and joining the chambers of commerces and saying, hey, let's get things happening. Let's get some ideas going. And started talking about what can we do to get people to come and move to our neighborhood. Everyone said we need a Chipotle. I heard Chipotle is going to fix everything. Whole Foods. We get a Whole Foods. Everyone's going to move back to our neighborhood. And I said, I've got an idea. Why don't we bring back that trolley car system? And people said, oh, it's crazy. It's been gone for half a century. You can't bring back a trolley car. I knew very little about trolleys, but I was a web guy. I knew how to make websites. So I went home that night and made a fake website called the Oak Cliff Transit Authority that looked really official. Had boards and newses and histories, pictures of European trams on the front. The next week, the Dallas Morning News, our newspaper, came out and did a story saying, dreaming the day the streetcars return. That's what Jason Roberts and other members of the recently formed Oak Cliff Transit Authority are hoping. But there were no other members. It was just me. And I had people call me in my neighborhood saying, we got a transit authority? This is great. And I was like, well, not really, but I would love your help in building this thing. And I found a lot of great people calling me. I had this guy who's become a mentor to me. It was a civil engineer saying, I will donate 100 hours pro bono to doing a feasibility study. And I had somebody else that was an 80-year-old man who was this streetcar major knowledge base around the world and had enough parts in his garage to build a trolley. So I had a little army that I could assemble. So while I'm working on that, I'm thinking this is going to take us decades, right? So I'll need to work on things like now to start getting things happening. So why don't I start kind of focusing on bicycling? This is what I also saw in Europe. But when I saw bicycling in Europe, it wasn't like I saw in the U.S. It was women in dresses and guys in suits riding their old heavy bikes to work. What I saw and what we celebrated when we talked about bicycling in Texas, the only way we knew how to bicycle was really where we started wearing spandex, we start doping, and we go 300 miles. Like, that's the only bicycling we know how to do in my neighborhood. So figure, well, why don't we just create a group? We'll call it Bike Friendly Oak Cliff. We'll take the same idea of the transit authority, and we'll say this is the idea of just taking your old Schwinn out of the garage, riding out to the grocery store together or the post office. I decided to go to City Hall and start saying, hey, I've got this great idea. Let's take all of our roads and cut them in half and put bike lanes everywhere. And I found when you're the guy that says that, you're going to have a lot of people that look like this come out that say, no, you're not going to do that. And I realized, all right, it's probably going to be hard for me to get this guy on a bicycle, so I'm going to have to go another tactic. So I decided, well, why don't we just do history rides? We'll have people come together and we'll just have fun. Go meet us, and we don't have a lot to celebrate in our neighborhood, so why don't we just, I don't know, follow the trail, Lee Harvey Oswald. So you take what you get, right? And thought, we'll go meet the grassy knoll, because that's where you meet for these rides. And we'll say, if we're lucky, 20 people will show up to ride a bicycle in hot Dallas and all. But what happened was we actually had 150 people show up to that first ride. And what you don't see is me looking terrified at the front of this line, because first of all, I didn't own a bicycle when we started Bike Friendly Oak Cliff. I just love the idea of having a bike culture. And also I thought, I don't need to be leading a movement. I'm your IT guy, right? And I don't necessarily need to be leading anyone to the bad side of town. But I found if you're passionate about something, you have everything it takes to become a leader. And people are waiting for someone just to take a stand and say, hey, things aren't working. Is there a better way? Are there better options? And trying new things. So I started doing other small projects. I realized at my kids' school, no kids were riding bicycles at all. There weren't even bike racks. So I started making punch cards for the kids and said, if you ride bikes for a week, we'll all get together, and we'll go out and we'll go have root beer floats at the end of the week. We went from having 0 kids to 100 kids riding within that first 5 days. And then we went from being the worst city for cycling in the United States of America with no bike infrastructure. We actually had no bike lanes because we had a bike coordinator for the city that was vehemently opposed to bike infrastructure. It was really strange. This is the first bike lane in our city that I designed, your IT guy. So it was a lot of fun. So I started thinking, okay, I'm working on the trolley car, I'm working the president of this theater, I'm working on bicycling. Like, what about these blocks of buildings that aren't working in my neighborhood? What can we do to fix these? So I looked at it and I realized, well, okay, we did a lot of things to hurt them. First of all, this was an old streetcar stop. We changed the streets to one-way streets that became high-speed in the 1970s. We thinned the sidewalks. We changed the zoning, so it was no longer retail, it was now light industrial. And then we created all these laws and rules, and you don't have to read this, but just know we have rules that said it was going to be, for flowers on the sidewalk, it was going to be $1,000 in permitting. If I want to have shade awnings over each window, $1,000 per window. Street cafes are $1,000 times area times market value times 85% times 12%. I have no idea what that is. We had laws that say it's illegal for us to put merchandise on the sidewalk, and if you really want to kill your street life, put a law that says crowds are not allowed to gather on the sidewalk. We had all those rules, and they were all from 1941, and asked our city, well, why do we have all these rules? And I'm like, we don't know. We created them. You just have to follow them. This is the way it goes. So I got my neighbors together and said, okay, well, it's obviously illegal for us to do anything to make this block come to life. So what would happen if we took a weekend and we broke every law we possibly could? So that's what we did. We painted our own bike lanes. We added our own cafe seating. We thinned the streets ourselves. We brought historic lighting out. We put string lights between the buildings. We painted murals. We took the empty buildings and put the businesses we always wanted to have. So we took bookshops. We created coffee stores. We created bike shops. And we printed off all the laws and rules we were breaking. We put them in the windows. And we invited our city staff and our mayor out and said, come out to our Better Block project. They came out and they're like, I don't know if we're supposed to be here. And we're like, we're all going to jail. But what happened was everyone said, this makes far more sense. The neighborhood's out. There's hundreds of people here. Our kids have things to do. We can sit outside. We can enjoy this space. It's beautiful again. I had people that were in their 80s and 90s that used to live in the neighborhood and said, this is what it used to be like before. We turned it back into the way it should have always been. It should have never changed. So people said, well, that's great. Also, the other interesting thing was all those buildings. So we got a lot of rules changed after that project. So we got the zoning unanimously voted to go back to retail. You know how difficult that is. We got it done in 3 months. And so all those buildings that were empty were leased within months after that project. People said, that's great, but you don't know it's nice outside. Remember this weather thing. It gets 100 degrees 3 months out of the year. So I said, well, let's try this again. We'll take another streetcar stop. We'll do it when it's 100 degrees out. But we'll have to figure out a way, how can we make it a cooler space? Because cities figure these things out. There's a lot of ways to make places cooler or make them warmer or anything. And so we took another area that had other problems, no sidewalks on one side, broken up sidewalks on the other. There's a pole with nothing on it. Just kind of this gray ugliness. So we got some more neighbors together that we did our first Better Block project and said, let's come out in the middle of the night. We brought out 42 trees, brought out 100 bushes to create pedestrian islands to make it safer for people to cross and to slow cars. We took pallets from the trash behind the buildings. We made decks so people could sit outside. We painted our own crosswalks. You're not supposed to do that. We added bicycles to the pole that was empty because we're the bike part of town. It's funny thing, we weren't really the bike part of town. We just kept telling people we were. And it's funny how that became a self-fulfilling prophecy. And then lastly, we put tables under the trees. And what happened was people came out and they would not leave. They started calling their friends, and they were bringing out baby strollers, and they're saying, you got to get out here. This looks like Vancouver. This doesn't look like Dallas. And then this is the picture of how the block looked when we were through it. So you can see the beautiful thing with this picture is it looks like a rendering. We had so many architects and consultants come in and give us renderings of how our city could look and our blocks could look that were never getting built, that we started suffering from rendering fatigue. So we just took all the time and energy it takes to draw pictures, and we just built it ourselves. So we brought those trees. Those aren't Photoshop trees. They're real trees. Those are real crosswalks we made. Those are real bicycles from neighbors. The other thing was, too, we just did this on a weekend, and we took it all down afterwards so people could experience it temporarily. People came out to this block who had never been here in the city, and they came out, and they're like, this is amazing. They came back the next weekend, and they're driving around looking for it. It was right around here. It was this great place. There's trees and all these businesses and hundreds of people out. So what we learned was it was important for us to work fast. We have an idea, we want to do something, but we get excited and we start going through the machinations of City Hall, and the bureaucracy gets so heavy and so overwhelming that we end up shutting down. And the people that were involved with the project move on to other things. Somebody's child goes to another school, somebody's termed out of office, somebody's parent is getting ill, they have to take care of them. So we had to work quickly. And so we started applying this idea of doing things temporarily, getting a testing environment going, let people experience these places, and then try to push for the permanency afterwards, because we can disprove a lot of assumptions and worst-case scenarios that we all create whenever we want to make great things in our neighborhoods. So I had one group that wanted to do a dog park. And they came to me like, we want to do a dog park. And they were like, but we went to the city. The city said we need 3 contiguous acres of land, which we don't have in the inner city neighborhood. And it's going to take us years and all these studies and millions of dollars. And they were frustrated. And they said, well, what would you guys do? And I said, well, we're standing across the street from this field that had overgrown weeds and people were throwing trash in. And I was like, well, why don't we just turn this field that's in our own neighborhood into a dog park? And they were like, well, that's great. We'll raise some money. We'll have some meetings with our team. And then maybe 6 or 7 months, we'll do a dog park. And I was like, well, why don't we just do it this weekend? So that's what we did. We copied the city of Dallas's official park signs and made our own park signs. We went in, we mulched the grass. We started studying dog parks around the world, like, why are these so complex and why do they take years? And we realized when we studied them, the trick to making a dog park is you need to know how to make a fence. And so we figured that out pretty quick. We had a really smart team. And then we started making amenities for people as opposed to just dogs. That would be people want to linger longer, because we realized dogs just need a place to run and pee. But you put swings out for kids, you put out kiosks so you can sell dog biscuits, or kiosks to sell coffee in case your dog drinks coffee. It's a great way to get people to stay longer in these spaces. And then we started getting proclamations from our city council member to make these things permanent. People also ask me, like, what happens when you end up breaking all those laws and rules? This is my friend Scott, who helped me identify all those rules I showed you in that one slide. Scott is now our city council member, so. The other idea that came out of this work was this, like, our city's motto for Dallas was think big. But we found what think big meant was we're going to spend hundreds of million dollars on a moonshot project. We're going to hire an Italian architect to design a bridge that looks like a fish skeleton that you can see all over the world that we hope makes a million little things. But the places that I love around the world, whether it's in London or Paris or New Orleans, here in Eugene, it's these little blocks I love to go to that have 100 little things. Little cafes, bookstores. They have great historic lights, benches. They've got maps, directories, murals, art. And as a community, we can make 100 little things a lot faster than that one giant thing that we hope makes all of these small things. And I found I can use simple things at the hardware store to start transforming space cheaply. So first of all, white duct tape looks just like the thermoplastic tape, paint that cities use to paint stripes on the ground. Found trash cans at the dollar store can be reclad into beautiful planners. I found we can take those giant graphics stickers that are on the sides of city buses and make crosswalks. And then we can go to the city and say, hey, this intersection is too fast. People are barreling through here. We want to slow it down and make it beautiful and a place that the community can linger and start small businesses. And they'll say, it'll take us years and millions of dollars, and say, don't worry about it. We'll take care of it on Saturday. And fix it ourselves. So we started this work as kind of a guerrilla initiative, but it was funny how it started getting a lot of interest all around the world. In fact, people started calling me and like, how are you pulling all this stuff off? And the one rule, we said, how can you break all these laws and rules in broad daylight? And I said, I found you can break any rule you want as long as you wear an orange vest. It's a little planning secret for you guys. But people started calling us and saying, hey, we want to do these things legitimately. And then the city of Dallas began hiring us to actually say, well, why don't you try out some of these ideas and some of our comprehensive plan in our planning books that were never getting built? Because now people have distrust. And the one rule I found when I talked to a mayor of Charlotte, he said, it's easy to build trust in a community. What creates distrust is when you don't do what you say you're going to do. And so I learned it was really important, like when the city keeps putting these plans out, if you don't create action, you're boiling up distrust from your community. We have to make things happen. We got to get things going. I started also studying places around the world to figure out, well, what makes certain places work and other places not work. One of the interesting things I found when I was talking to a group when I was in Edinburgh, Scotland, I was saying, I noticed that all these buildings that we used to build, and we don't do this anymore because of our cars, were all built close together, hugging the sidewalk. They made these beautiful, like, contiguous spaces, and then we like to be in these areas. Those are the places we love, and that's what we're trying to recreate in these cities, these beautiful, like, Main Street kind of areas. And why is this? Why do we create these forms naturally? And they said, well, that's actually a scientific thing. We've known about this. It's called, there's something called thigmotaxis. Humans like to be close to edges or close to walls. In fact, there's several animals that also have that same trait. Scientists know this about rats. So lab rats also have this trait. And so when they're testing out our anti-anxiety medications, what they'll do is they'll load them up in a rat. And if a rat moves away from a wall and out to an open field where it could be like attacked, but it's because it feels safe, then they know it's working. So that just means it takes a lot of Prozac for us to be cool with places that look like this. So I also wanted to find people that had made change and made quickly throughout history when I was looking at this. And one of the stories I ran across that was really compelling was a story about Napoleon. People may know that Napoleon, Emperor of France, was exiled to St. Helena, but he was actually exiled one other time before to an island called Melba off of Italy. And he was given a sovereignty over the entire island. He was going to be the president of this tiny island of 30,000 impoverished people. So he gets there and he looks around and he's bored and he realizes the economy is just in the pits. Nothing's working. So he's like, what can I do to help get this place working again? So he realizes there's old iron mines that were from BC times that were on parts of the island, so he starts reopening those and getting iron work going again, so they can have a trade to sell. Then he starts realizing the kids' school curriculums were outdated, so he starts updating those into modern curriculums. He realizes the agricultural means were all outdated as well, so he starts updating those. Then he's a little bored, so he decides to create an army. Then lastly, he creates a navy, and he gets himself off the island and becomes Emperor of France again. And he does it in 300 days. So it shows you when a lot of us look at all these problems in our cities and figure out, well, how are we going to make change? It's just there's so much. It's always, we hear the same things. It's just the scale and money are the big issues. But the thing is, those are the same issues in every city around the world. And some can make change and make things happen, and some look at this and say, this is just too overwhelming, and we don't know what to do. So with our work now, I'll kind of give you examples of what this has led to now when cities now have hired us to kind of help reimagine their spaces and kind of get their economics moving again, get their public infrastructure of a higher quality. So this is a project we did as an example, and one that we similar to many of the projects we do now in Akron, Ohio. So if you look at it, these streets were all overbuilt because Akron was the former tire capital of the world. So when the tire industry went away, just like the car industry in Detroit, they suffered. So they suffered from depopulation, overbuilt infrastructure they could no longer support because they didn't have the tax revenue coming in to do that. They had these gaps in the teeth between these beautiful old buildings, empty spaces. And so we go out with the neighborhood because there's people still living here. What can we do? So we walk around. In this community, we found there was a bunch of refugees from Bhutan moving in. And there was Italian immigrants who had been there for 100 years that were continuing to move to the area. So we walk through with them. We start asking, what do you wish was here? What would make you want to linger here? Why are you not coming out now? And we start dreaming with them. And we start mapping the area. And we start saying, okay, what can we do? Here's all the empty buildings. What businesses do you wish you always had? So we have a lady that says, I want to do dumplings. I've always wanted to make my own restaurant. And so okay, we'll give you this space over here. Somebody else wanted to do an art gallery. And somebody else wanted to do a coffee shop, an old Italian man. And so we'll take the streets and we'll make them beautiful. We'll add bike infrastructure. We'll add shade trees. And we'll take the empty spaces between the buildings and we'll make great quality public spaces. So then we work with the city's official street equipment. We fill it with kids' finger paint. And then we take white duct tape with neighbors and we line that. Within 2 hours, we have the bike lanes that you see in New York and other places. And then we put street trees around those. We take those graphics that are on the city buses and we make mid-block crossings because the city said that'll never work. So we're like, well, let's just try it, and it worked great. We go in and we take this empty lot. It's been empty for 50 years, right? And just take some soil, some volunteers from Joann's Fabrics, and within 2 hours we make an Italian plaza. We take turn lanes for cars that are just, we don't have the traffic anymore, and we turn them into bocce ball courts. Bank buildings that have been empty, again, 20, 30 years now, and we just take tires and paint, and we make them into beautiful plazas. Put empty buildings that we couldn't gain access to because the landlords weren't available. So then we just start putting vinyl stickers on them to show what they could possibly be. This building was slated for demolition to become a parking lot. We were showing them how you could save it and make it into a small business and put a small business inside of it from the neighborhood. This is, again, just duct tape and finger paint on an intersection to show how we can fix this. This is in Barberton, Ohio. And this is the block transformed. And I can tell you, just a few hours before, all the people that are riding in it and they're walking on the sidewalk in these public spaces, going to these small businesses, never imagined they'd be hanging out in this space. They said, we would never thought we'd ever be here. And now we can never imagine it going back again. This is amazing. What they realized is they had all the tools and the resources they needed together to make a great place. They just didn't know how to organize it properly. And that's all we did, was help them identify all the skills they already had baked in and basically write down, this is what you said you want, why aren't you doing it? And then figuring out the obstacles and plowing through those and making a great place in 30 days, not 30 years. And so we can do it in all kinds of environments, from rural to suburban, exurban, urban. We've gone all over the map. So this is a part of Dallas that we went to in the neighborhood and talked to them, and they said, this is the worst of the worst. I mean, drug crime, rampant. It's highly impoverished. Liquor stores on every corner. There's old empty phone booths. You see weeds overgrown. And so we thought, we got to figure out a way to fall in love with this place. Every place has something that can be used to build upon and make a great place. So we started riding our bikes around, and this is a largely African-American neighborhood, very impoverished, like I mentioned. We're riding our bicycles around, and we see these small shotgun churches nestled in the neighborhood, and we're hearing gospel choirs. So we're like, wow, we got gospel music. So that's powerful. We can work with that. And then we see these guys out in front of their yards, like smoking barbecue, because the power had been turned off, right? The gas had been turned off. So we've got barbecue, and then we've got gospel choirs. Why don't we make a Better Block gospel barbecue? And so we went out to the neighborhood, and we brought out what they already do with their own skills, and we transformed their street to look like this. So it was beautiful and inviting. We took the neighbors, again, that were smoking barbecue on their front yard, and we put them out in the street and said, start a small business. They were highly competitive, and they loved getting out there because they did this so well. We took those small choirs, and we put them out in the streets. So we had people coming in that were not from the area that said, I would get on an airplane and fly for hours to experience what was in my own backyard, this incredible culture. And then when people said you can't have Paris because it's Dallas, we proved to them that you could. It just takes a couple tables, chairs, some plants, and neighbors being kind to each other and saying, look, we need a better place. We want a better horizon for our children and for us to grow old in. And now we post all of the work we do on our website. We have a nonprofit called Better Block Foundation. And so you go to betterblock.org. You can download our green bike lane recipes. You can download the Italian Plaza recipes. This is our shop, actually. So we're actually in a former gas station. So metaphorically, it's very interesting. But we've gone back into my IT roots, and so we're applying digital technologies to this. So it was really fascinating. We were talking about kind of the wood technology that's being done in the area, and we work with that extensively, actually. We do 3D printing, so you guys may know that, and work with kids to show how they can 3D print their neighborhoods. But then we also use a lot of CNC routers, and you guys may know what this is. It's basically just a saw attached to a computer. And so what we were inspired by was this group in London that was taking this technology that's now everywhere. You can find CNC machines all over the place. And they were making houses out of plywood with no glue, screws, or nails. It just goes out, you download the files, it starts cutting out the shapes. Like puzzle pieces, you put it together. And then you can put those designs online, and anybody can download them and make this house as well. So we thought, if you can make a house, can't we make everything else in the city block that we need, like the bus stops and the cafe seating, the small dog park amenities? And so we've got on our website free designs you can download, and you can use a CNC router, which they have them in maker spaces and fab labs and universities. This is just some of the designs that we have that you can download. But what it does, it's really simple. You just basically put a sheet of plywood on, it cuts out, this is an example of one of the files we have, it cuts out these shapes, you go off, have a cup of coffee, come back in 45 minutes later, you'll have 2 chairs and a table that you can assemble. So if you can do that in 45 minutes, thank you. So if you can do that in 45 minutes, imagine what you can do in a week for your city. So we've designed a lot of things. We've got bus stops. We've got bike racks you can download. We started copying Paris's beautiful kiosks to put all their posters of events happening. We've got we did a project in Florida where we made community garden boxes so that people could do community gardens with greenhouses. We made bleachers so we could go out and create the baseball field again in neighborhoods or make theater spaces. This is a small coffee kiosk. We designed small business kiosks. So some of these brick and mortars were taking too long to fix and they were too expensive. So we thought, well, let's get the small opportunity that's in between these spaces in the meantime to get some business going. We made putt-putt courses with kids. These are trampolines that we put into the sidewalks. This is a band shell that this is one of my designers designed for Aberdeen, South Dakota, a town of, I want to say, 5,000 people. This is taking a parking space, that parklet idea we saw from San Francisco, and saying, let's go to the next level. So this is a design you can download, what's called a parklet. So you can go sit outside, have your cup of coffee, park your bike in it, and relax with your neighbors. This is a geodesic dome. We got crazy after a while. Sorry about that. But we can still get low-tech. We don't necessarily have to go all high-tech and all. In fact, in Detroit, we needed bollards for a project. Like, we need a lot of bollards to separate the bike lanes from the car lanes. They didn't know what to do. And I said, you know what? I found toilet plungers work great for this. The problem is when you go to a Home Depot and you're loading up your basket with 100 toilet plungers, they look at you really funny. But we're taking these designs now, and we're going into schools and whenever we do projects, and we're working with kids in the neighborhood schools, and they're downloading these files, and they're modifying and making their own furniture and putting their names in it. They're taking their school campuses, and they're making their own, fixing their courtyards and making benches in these spaces. These are kids that we worked with in Florida to help them fix their park and put benches in and paint them. And that Better Block that I started in Dallas, Texas in 2010, honestly, just because I wanted to have like a bike lane and a coffee shop in my neighborhood, started getting a lot of attention. And people started calling and say, hey, we want a Better Block in our neighborhood. And I thought, well, I don't have a lot of time because I'm working on computers, but I'll put a website out, I'll open source it so anybody can do it, it'll be free, and this will be a how-to guide. And within that first year, it started going all around the country. And the next year, it started going around the world, from Melbourne, Australia, all the way to Tehran, Iran. When I tell people that the people in Tehran, Iran called me and asked me about breaking laws, I was like, I don't know about breaking laws in Tehran, Iran. I think your stakes may be a little higher. All right, this is my little streetcar group, so I'm going to go back to that story. You guys might recognize this bridge. This is in Portland. So we went up to Portland, and we were studying their streetcar system, met with Rick Gustafson, amazing human, who talked to us about how he did the streetcar project there, and how it took him 20-plus years. And we're like, okay, it's going to take us 20 years, but we need to stay at this. And he said it's going to be a hard trudge, but it's going to be worth it. Even if it doesn't work out, you're going to learn all kinds of interesting things about your neighborhood, you're going to meet neighbors, and you're going to start kind of figuring out ways to fix other things. And so we're up in Portland, we're looking at you guys here in Oregon and the infrastructure you guys have developed. Got back home, we started talking to the city and saying, like, we started looking for grants. We found one grant called the Tiger Grant, the first year they'd ever put it out, and told the city of Dallas, hey, we'd love to apply for this Tiger Grant thing. And they were like, okay, Oak Cliff Transit Authority, go ahead, apply for all the grants you want. We had 0.3% chance of getting any money whatsoever, but what happened was we won millions of dollars. And instead of taking 30 years to bring back the streetcar, we did it in 5. And all I did was build a website. So I tell people, you'll be amazed at what can happen. Beyond that, things have happened throughout our neighborhood because of the spine that this created, that this trolley car runs along. There's cranes everywhere that's developing all throughout that area where people weren't coming before. So we have these buildings coming, and we started saying, well, we can fix these things. What else can we do? So I gathered our neighbors and friends that, let's start restaurants. So we started a restaurant. If you come to my neighborhood, come to Oddfellows. You'll help put my kids through college. It'll be great. We also, I started getting a lot of attention and awards. I got to lecture at Harvard. Got to have a dinner with the First Lady. We were in the Venice Biennale. I decided to run for U.S. Congress because I had a free April. I mean, all of this really cool stuff happened. And it's thought, well, what can stop us, right? Oh, we figured out ways to make things happen and change our neighborhood. But the one thing that completely stopped me in my tracks was in 2012, I was diagnosed with stage 3 cancer. Then everything stopped. And at that point, I thought, well, what was all this for? I'm not going to get to watch my kids grow up. I'm not going to get to ride the trolley car we built. I'm not going to get to take part in these small businesses that we're helping launch in our neighborhood. And when I was at my sickest, people from the community started coming out and knocking on my door and started taking my daughter to go out to the mall to go shopping and my son to go out fishing. And then when I was really bad shape, loaded up on chemo and could barely move, they're filling my fridge with food. And then they started doing these campaigns to say, how can we build a better Jason? And so I tell people what I got out of all of this work was a neighborhood. And I think everybody thinks it's the coffee shops, it's the bike lanes, it's the small businesses, but it's not. We all are in this room right now for one thing, and that's to make great places, to make a place that we are proud of, that we want to grow old in, and say, look at this beautiful space that we have that we're going to hand down to our future generations, that our kids can thrive in, that we can celebrate, that we can put back on postcards again. And we've just kind of gotten away from that. And before I forget, in 2013, I was diagnosed as being cancer-free, so I'm going to be just fine. All right, and that's it for me, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason, for your stories and insights, and isn't that why we're all here? Create the legacy for today and tomorrow. Give your children a place to grow, develop, and lead the way and provide the example of what they're doing there. The interesting part about it is, you may have heard things, if you're passionate, you got everything you need to be a leader. And once you put that together, do it this weekend. Don't form a study committee. Don't do that. Take a look at your ordinances. You'll be really surprised about what you have in there and what is illegal to do. But yeah, that's great. That was such a focus on really where we're all at, why you're here, and why we do the things we do for Oregon cities and for our communities. That's the passion that I see in all of you, and that's the passion we see in the success stories that are around us. Hey, more sessions are coming up here, concurrent sessions at 10:45, including, you heard them mention about PG&E's unique presentation on what the heck is a smart city. That and many more. There are some tours. If you're interested, run down the LOC folk at the booth, and maybe that'll work for you. And all of your state agency directors are here today, so if you want that instant solution for the weekend, go see them. They're there and available, and if that doesn't quite get you there, the congressional offices are here, so see, you can work both sides today. And last little piece, make your most of the trade show. And the beauty of this year's trade show is it's right in front of you. You walk through it all the time. It's there, plus some additional that's over on that side. So lots of great stuff going on as of yet. Lunch will be provided in the trade show today. And, I did have one of those. It's like I lost my keys and where you're at. This is, let me see, Moe Newbold lost a wallet, a zippered pouch on it that says Greece, So if you find that, bring it to the LOC booth, and we'll make sure it gets to the right spot that way. Now, beyond that, go out, enjoy the sessions, talk to one another, and we'll see you at the awards dinner tonight. Thank you so much.